Harmonics, and welcome to today's episode of The Profitable Farmer, where we talk about ways that you can become more profitable on your farm and help put more money in your pocket. Right? Today, I really want to talk to you a little bit more about biostimulants and sort of more natural inputs. The use of biostimulants is not a new thing. It's not something that just came around, in the last year or two. I mean, obviously, our technology, the crop booster, is a relatively new concept which aids in those biostimulants. But really, we got to kind of look at what are we doing for the long term. You know, it's sometimes farming is one of those industries where it's so challenging just to confront and deal with the things that you're looking at right now. Like, how do I get my crop out this year, right? How do everything I need to do this year to get my crop out, right? And that's when do I plant, and if there's too much rain or not enough rain, do I have to delay my planting or change my schedule around it? How does that affect all my other things I have to deal with labor and spraying and all this other stuff, right? There's so many different variables that go into getting your crop out that sometimes it's hard to take a step back and look at what those long-term effects are. But the use of biostimulants is really a matter of um, doing a couple things. First of all, obviously, it's taking care of the environment and try to find ways to get that yield and get that increase in quality and yield without having to spray toxic chemicals or things which would reduce soil health or reduce longevity for your farm, right? The other side of it is obviously economic. How do we rebuild that soil and keep that soil arable and keep that soil, going so that the next year, the year after that, the year after that, and it can continue on, and then pass it on to the next generation of farming, right? How do I make that happen? I kind of watched a relatively disturbing talk on it was a TED talk actually, and he talked about the fact that we only have about 10% of the humus or the mycorrhizal fungi that we had, in the past. We're down to about 10% of that. And once we get down to zero, it's going to be almost impossible to grow anything on the earth. There'll be no topsoil left over, right? So the use of biologicals and microbes and other things are very important components of that. And the stimulation of mycorrhizae and other types of beneficial bacteria, beneficial soil microbes, is a very, very important component to overall health, not just in terms of getting a good crop out this year, but also long-term health. And if you've heard concepts like regenerative farming and stuff, you may have heard that concept because at some point we have to just confront the fact that we can't just keep doing things the way we've been doing it for the last 7 years. Just like in the industrial revolution, it was fine to put out trains that were just billowing smoke all over the place because there weren't that many trains, right? It was fine to have cars that got like a mile a gallon and just puff smoke and they had no smog and then nothing else because there weren't that many cars. Eventually you get to the point where too many cars on the road creates smog and that creates a big problem. The ozone layer and other things. Eventually we got to come up with innovations to sort of do things in a different way so we don't continue to ruin our environment, right? And with cars, we've already done that. We have smog, we have catalytic converters, smog, uh, filtration systems that actually reduce the amount of emissions that cars put out. We've eliminated CFCs and carbofluorocarbons from like aerosols and those types of things, which was destroying our ozone layer. We've created new and improved forms of air conditioning chemicals and systems so that they're not as damaging to the ozone layer as well. I mean, and now we have electric cars coming out, and now we have self-driving cars which are coming out, which may or may not be a good thing, I guess, depending on how well they're designed. And we have all these innovations which are helping improve things, helping move things forward. And for agriculture, it's important for us to not necessarily jump on every new possibility or new product that comes out, but to really start to look at what kinds of things can we do to help maintain yield or increase yield without doing so in a negative way, which has a number of negative side effects, right? And I think that the use of chemicals and chemical fertilizers and all these things, and the overuse of some nutrients to the detriment of others, and these types of things, while it might make a short-term economic sense, it's really not doing us any good from a long-term perspective. Not only from a standpoint of environmental damage and this other stuff, but also from the point of longevity. Like, how do we keep that soil going over and over and over again? How do we take care of our soil so that it pulls that carbon and nitrogen out of the air and actually can hold it in the soil so that plants can utilize it, right? That's beneficial not just from an economic and a farming standpoint. That's beneficial from an environmental standpoint as well. And there is a point where these different factors can meet and work well together. But unfortunately, what we're seeing, I think, too much of in the last maybe 5, 10 years is these different forces coming against each other, right? You have governmental regulation now, which is becoming a huge player in actually, forcing farmers to come up with solutions. The idea is you guys aren't moving fast enough. We need to force you to use less nitrogen and less other fertilizers. And so they're actually telling farmers, you got to cut your fertilizer usage by 30%, by 50% or more. They did that in Sri Lanka a year ago, and now they reduced their food production because they had no better solution. At least they didn't know about our solution anyway, to combat that differential in yield, and they basically they had a revolution on their hands. Right now, you're looking at the same thing happening in the Netherlands, where they're having a lot of farmers protesting this edict that they have to reduce their fertilizer by 30%. Now you have the government in Canada telling the farmers the same thing, and it's regulation is one of those things. It's almost like trying to cut your hair with an axe. It's like you're trying to cut your hair by cutting your head off, almost kind of a thing, right? And regulation is a very difficult thing because it's a broad brush type of thing. They just make some kind of recommendation. They don't necessarily care how you get there. Well, with Kyminasi Plant Booster, the product that we created and we came out with a couple of years ago, the whole point of this is ultimately to help give you a solution that can allow you to really drop that chemical usage and drop that fertilizer usage and drop those pesticides and drop the fungicides and everything else and really reduce those input costs, but do so in a way that's not going to also reduce your yield in the same way. Because we can't afford with the growing population to just stop growing food, right? We also can't afford to completely just axe our fertilizer with no solution in place. So I want to call on governments who are looking at regulation for environmental purposes or other purposes. Assuming you have a human purpose and a real desire to help people and to help the environment, then we want to work with you to help farmers maintain their yield and maintain their profitability while decreasing some of these negative things for the environment, because there is a solution that can have everybody winning. I don't think anybody wants farmers to lose. I don't think anybody wants farmers, to not make a good living for their family. But at the same time, there is a better solution than what's being used out there. So if you use biologicals, if you use different forms of regenerative farming, organic type farming, and solutions, equipment solutions, and farm technology solutions like the crop booster, which can keep your yield at a high level while reducing your chemical imprint. That's ultimately the way that everybody benefits. The entire reason why we started Harvest Harmonics several years ago was because we wanted to give our farmers a viable solution that would allow them to continue to maintain their yield and stay profitable on a business level while making better quality food and a better environment for everybody. So we want to help everybody work together on innovative solutions to push the needle forward that really makes farming not only profitable, but also profitable in a sustainable, same way. So if that's the kind of farmer you are and you're interested in working with us for that goal of creating a better environment, creating better food, and also doing so and staying profitable while you're doing that, then give us a call at 727-324-6750. I'd love to talk with you and work with you on your farm so that you can become part of the future of farming today and we can all win and have a happier, healthier, more sustainable planet. Have a great day, guys.